Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Ninja Kid, brought to us by Bandai. Ninja Kid is a part of a series that Bandai put out along with Dragon Power and Chubby Cherub, taking Japanese anime-based games and turning them into a little bit different license to bring them out in North America. For example, Ninja Kid is actually based off the manga GGG no Kitaro. While the gameplay completely remains the same, the only thing that really gets changed is a few of the character sprites, as well as, of course, if the game does have dialogue, the localization. So here we go with Ninja Kid for the NES. Ninja Kid is a very early NES game, and like many of the other early NES games, the real point of the game is more based on score than actually completing the game. There is no ending to the game, as after you've completed all the levels, they just keep looping over and over again. In Ninja Kid, there's several different world maps that you can explore throughout the game. These world maps will actually come at random every time you complete the stage. The only thing that's for sure is that this will be your first world map that you contend with. Each of the world maps contains different arches that you go into to start a different side-scrolling type level. What side-scrolling type level you're going to get is random as well. There's different types, including this one, the Blazing Inferno, where we actually have a little fireball that follows us along the screen, and then we actually have to move around the screen by moving our character in order to light all the candles that are in the background. You have your counter at the top of the screen. Right now I have 4 more candles that I need to light, and once you've lit all those candles, the doors will open up, allowing you to complete the level. When you complete a stage, you get 2 different doors, one on the left and one on the right. By picking the correct door, you immediately come back out to the world map. If you pick the incorrect door, you then have to go to one of the different boss towers. There's 4 different boss towers to contend with, and I'm sure we'll see all of them during the course of the game. The next type of level we're doing is Guerrilla Warfare, and this is pretty much a kill-em-all type of level. You have a certain amount of enemies that you must kill in order to complete the level. You can see your counter right next to where it would have been a candle in the previous level. Once you defeat all the enemies on the screen that you need to, the doors will open up. There's another similar type called Dogfight that you also have to destroy all the enemies, and in Dogfight though, you actually are more of a vertical shooting type level, where you're actually floating and control your character as he's riding a tornado. There are many different items to collect throughout the game as well, including whistles, which you may have seen I just picked up in the previous stage, which usually comes out after you have only one more item left to collect or one more enemy to destroy. If you pick up a whistle, this allows you at the boss fight of each of the stages to use a familiar. There's a unicorn, a griffin, and then I'm not sure exactly what the name of the final familiar is. It's more of a snow-type creature that appears. These familiars, when you summon them, will aid you in the battle. If you don't have the whistles though, you can't use them, of course, during the boss fights. Here is the first time that I actually picked the wrong door, and we have our first boss tower. This very large evil eye at the top of the tower. You must climb up, dodging the enemies that are in the level, as well as any projectiles the eye throws out, and when the shade goes away from the eye when it opens up, hit the eye 1 time to defeat it, and move on. Here is our first boss battle of the game. To summon a familiar, I walk all the way to the left and duck down. This summons the Pegasus, or the unicorn. The Pegasus actually blocks all projectiles that come out from the enemy and gives me a great shield to easily keep firing my projectile and take out the boss. Dogfight, which I mentioned earlier, is kind of a vertical shooter type level, where you're riding in a tornado and you use that to fly around the screen, taking out enemies. Once you defeat a certain number of enemies, just like Guerrilla Warfare, the gates will open up. The key item though that you must collect in each of the worlds is the scroll. Now I've already picked it up in this stage. As you can see, it's at the top center of my collection screen at the top. By having the scroll, that allows you to enter the boss fight for that particular level, so you don't have to complete all the arches in order to actually complete each world. Here's our second boss tower, which is the Cyclops. Pretty much exactly like the evil eye one, just climb up and deliver 1 shot to its only eye in order to take out the boss. Now while I already have the scroll for the stage and I could go right to the boss battle if I want to, I'm going to show a few more levels here just so that we can see all the different types. I'm sure even throughout the whole gameplay that I'm going to show each of the bosses in the game, we may not get to see every exact representation of each type of level. Unfortunately, since it is completely random, it's really hard to show you everyone, and we're probably going to see several ones that repeat over and over again. This boss tower is a little bit different than the previous ones, where we only have one hit to defeat the boss. On this one, the boss has two eyes, and we must destroy both of them as they move around the circular parts of his eye in order to actually destroy it. They're a little bit small and can be a little bit tricky to hit, but once you hit both of them, the boss is destroyed and you can continue on. Since I already have the scroll, I can go right to the boss. I don't have to complete that last arch. If you want to, once again, I can summon Pegasus to come out and help me. For this boss, it can be really tricky to land in hits on it, so usually I like to pick the fireball weapon if you have any, and use that in order to hit the centerpiece of the boss. Once you defeat it, we move on to the next stage, which happens to be a repeat of the first map that we journeyed to. However, the arches are all going to take us to different random events, so we're never quite sure what they're going to be. There is many other world map areas, and as we continue on, I'm sure we'll get a lot of the different ones, but we may not see every type of world map there is in the game. Just like before, when I defeat them to only one enemy left to destroy, a whistle comes down that'll allow me to summon Pegasus. I'll be sure to show you all three of the familiars throughout the run of the game. Here we have another rematch against the Cyclops. Climb up and just deliver one shot to defeat him. Poison Field is the only type of level I really haven't talked about yet. In Poison Field, there's spirits that are floating around in the area. You must collect a certain number of these spirits in order to move on. You accidentally can destroy them, so you have to be careful that you know that you actually have to collect them. The first time playing the game, I couldn't figure out how to complete this area because I kept shooting at the ghost and not actually collecting them. After a while in these areas, you may see a whole bunch of different items raining down from the sky, so you have to be very careful to dodge in and out of them as they fall down, so you don't end up getting hit. I don't think I've mentioned yet that you actually only have one hit before you lose a life in the game. Even though I have the scroll already, I can't go right to the boss because unfortunately there's one of the arches that I have to go through right directly in my path, so I must complete this guerrilla warfare before I can even get to the next boss level. After only a few times to reach these types of levels, you'll get used to them pretty quickly. The only thing that's really going to change in a lot of them is sometimes there is a little bit different layout, because there is a few different types of layout overall, but also the monsters and enemies that you fight in each of the levels will change up a little bit as well, getting a little bit harder the more and more levels you travel through. Here is our third boss of the game. This bouncing around enemy is actually a little bit annoying because of the way it moves towards you and you have to jump up to hit it. However, once you get close to you, just run across away from it to the opposite side. This is also the first time I'll show you the Griffin familiar. You have to be on the far left side once again to use it, and what the Griffin does is come out on screen and freeze the enemy in place, allowing you to deliver a lot of hits to it really quickly. The enemy still throws out its projectiles, so you will have to dodge them, but it becomes a lot easier to hit that boss, and some of the other bosses that move around quickly it can be more effective against. Our fourth map that we're traveling to is a little bit different as well, so we have a new layout to deal with. However, the levels are once again pretty much going to be the same. We start off with a Poison Field. The worst thing though about the Poison Field levels in general is that a random totem type enemy will pop out from the background. You can't destroy it, but if you run into it, even jumping over it, it will kill you instantly. So it can be a real pain. It doesn't always show up, but I'm pretty sure it can only appear in these Poison Field type stages. As I accidentally shoot one of the ghosts there, finally grabbing the last one, and moving towards the door. Over here we run into another Blazing Inferno type stage. This one is pretty much a repeat of the first one that we dealt with in the game. We have to move the fireball around the stage and light all the candles that appear in the background. The worst part about these stages is definitely getting used to the little flame. Figuring out how its momentum and how its movements are going to work and how you have to jump in order to light all the candles. Sometimes you have to jump pretty oddly in order for the little flame to hit the candle that you want it to. I unfortunately picked the wrong door out of the two here, and we have to deal with another one of the tower bosses. This one is one of those ones with 2 eyes that you have to hit, so just climb up and take out both eyes. At this point in the game, as we're on our actual 4th boss rooms of the game, you've pretty much seen now all the different types of enemies and almost all the different types of levels to deal with. There's a few variants that we haven't seen yet, but we've definitely seen every type of level in the game. The 4th boss of the game is this old man that comes towards you firing projectiles. Sometimes you can see he actually fires the wrong direction. However, when I summon Pegasus, he ends up blocking them all for me, and I can really easily take him out. However, I'm going to take my time here and dodge him a little bit, so that I can summon all the familiars, since I have to summon them in order to show them all off. The second one once again being the Griffin, who freezes the enemy in place. All I have to do is now dodge the projectiles. After him, I now summon the snow-type Yeti-type creature that appears, and throws it looks like either snow or salt at the enemy. I'm not sure if he actually hurts the enemy or not. I don't really get his whole purpose, but once you deliver the final hit to the enemy, be very careful because he breaks apart into a 4-shot spread shot, and you'll have to jump up in order to dodge the ones that come straight at you. As you've noticed throughout, there's a few different weapons to select and pick up during the course of the game. The first one is your dart that you always have and you have an infinite amount of. The feather next to it kind of hovers through the screen and takes out all enemies that it hits. There's very few of these that you'll usually collect throughout the game, but they usually are a pretty powerful weapon against most of the creatures. You then have your shurikens, which will go straight through, and you have a limited amount of them that'll take out any enemy that it hits. You have a boomerang, which will hover all around the screen for a long time, destroying anything in its path as it's waving in and out. And then you have the fireball, which kind of has a circular path that it throws out. Like I showed you before, against certain bosses, the fireball can work really well. And that's pretty much the case with most of the weapons, as all the bosses are a little bit different, and each of the weapons may work a little bit differently against certain bosses, including some that are immune to fire. There is a few other items to collect, including those Japanese symbols that I collected in the previous level, which gave me a huge point boost. As well as there's also these red devil looking type things that I can grab that'll really speed my character up for that stage. Here we have another variant on the poison field type stage. This one's a little bit different than the ones that we've already seen, but the whole goal remains the same, as there's that weird totem type enemy that pops out of the background. Now that may be still a reference to the manga series the game is based off, and since I'm not very familiar with that particular manga, I'm not exactly sure what that totem actually represents or what it's supposed to be. For this boss is actually a repeat of the very first boss in the game, and pretty much all the bosses from here on out are variants of ones we've already fought, but they look and act a little bit differently, so I continue playing the game to show those off as well. There's only 3 more bosses that we actually get to see in the game. Start off on a new world map, we have another one of the Blazing Inferno levels, and this one is a whole skeleton type filled level, where we have to move around fighting skeleton enemies jumping on skulls in order to light the candles.